Hello everybody, Jake here and welcome to the hobby. In today's video we are looking at the top 10 most expensive Pokemon cards from the Scarlet and Violet era. These are going to be mainly cards that you can pull inside of any given sets. There may be a promo card here or there if these are promo cards that were readily available inside of the Scarlet and Violet era. There's going to be no trophy cards on this list, and these are going to be in PSA 10 condition so that we can really compare the apples to apples and know that the condition of the cards don't really matter. And at the same time, we can also see the PSA 10 population report, which I think is really insightful information because it shows you some of the staggering demand or lack of demand for some of these cards. How you guys interpret the data is going to be up to you, but I'll give you guys my insight on it. And before we get started, I would like to thank Collectr for sponsoring today's video. All the data and insight from today's video came straight from the Collectr app. The Collectr app is a super useful app that allows you to easily track your whole entire collection. I manage my whole entire collection through the Collectr app. It is a fantastic way to showcase your collection, show off all your cool Pokemon cards, connect with other collectors, and track all of the data right from your phone. Super useful and a super insightful tool for any collector. I highly recommend you guys check them out. If you'd like to see my showcase on Collectr, you can click the link down in the description and see my whole entire collection. It's readily available. Anyone can see every card I have inside of my collection, and you can always DM me anytime. A huge thank you to Collectr for sponsoring today's video. And to kick off our list, in 10th place, we have ourselves the gorgeous Leafeon EX from Prismatic Evolution. This card is currently going for $700 in 10th place, and we're already at $700. That is really staggering. But at the start of this year, this card was going for over $1,000, so it's gone down in price. That shouldn't really surprise anyone because it's a brand new card, and as more and more people grade it, the price on it should drop quite a bit. There are currently 600 PSA 10 copies of this card, and there's going to be more and more added every single month. Hundreds of copies of this card is probably going to be added to the population report every single month. Once we go to the end of this year, then we'll really know how many copies of it are truly being graded. It actually doesn't matter that much even if the population report is really high, and that goes to show you with the 9th card on this list, which is the Mew EX, the Bubble Mew EX from Paldean Fates. The little Bubble Mew who could, this card is currently going for $800. At the start of this year, it was going for roughly $650, and there are currently 9,753 PSA 10 copies of it. That's a lot. 9,000 copies is a lot of a card from any set at all, so it's really staggering, but these numbers just get more and more insane because in 8th place, we have ourselves the Great Felt Hat Pikachu. The Great Felt Hat Pikachu is what we should call it. It's currently going for also $800. I'm giving it a little bit of an edge just because these numbers are insane. It used to go for $540. It's currently going for $800. And this is what's shocking to me. There are 37,141 PSA 10 copies of this card. 37,000 copies of this card in a PSA 10. There's not 37 copies of it. There's 37,000 PSA 10 copies of it. You have to understand that there's a multiplier higher number of raw copies. There's probably 100,000 copies of this card. There's a lot of it. It's not that special of a card either. It is a really iconic card, but it's not a holo foil card. It's not a texture card. It is just a little piece of cardboard. In fact, the Great Felt Hat Pikachu card is one of the most faked card I've seen from the modern era because it's really easy to fake, and it's kind of hard to spot because people who are making reproductions of them don't really have to do texturing, do holo patterns. It's just a basic piece of cardboard, so it's a lot easier for them to fake. So I've seen a lot of copies of this card floating around that are fakes, and that's pretty darn scary. But with 37,000 copies of it, and it's still commanding a price of $800, just shows you how strong of a card this really is. Absolutely insane numbers. In 7th place, we have another card that's in tie for the same kind of spot. We have ourselves the Charizard EX, which is currently going for $800. This is a Charizard EX from 151. The reason I'm giving it an edge over the other two is because it used to go for upwards of $1,000 for a single PSA 10 copy at its absolute peak, so it has the potential to absolutely go quite a bit more. A really, really cool card. Obviously, 151 is a very nostalgic set. At the start of this year, it's going for right around $540. And another one with a really crazy population report. There are 15,500 PSA 10 copies of this card right now. Again, like, these numbers would have never been possible a year or two ago. A couple of years ago, if a card had 1,000 PSA 10 copies of, you would say, whoa, that's a lot. That's a lot for a population report. But you can see from this list, there's so many bloated cards out there, and they're still commanding quite a bit, which shows how much the hobby has grown, that there can be 37,000 Great Felt Hat Pikachu, 15,000 Charizard 151 PSA 10s. These are not raw copies. If these were raw copies, I would be less shocked, but these are PSA 10. People are grading these cards, and there's that many slabs of them. The pillar that 15,000 PSA 10 151 Charizard could stack up to, how many story highs that is, someone do the math, but that's absolutely insane that they're able to command this. This shows you how much the hobby's grown. It's grown by a multiplier that's higher than most people would ever expect, you know? Imagine if there was 100 collectors 10 months ago, I would say there's 10,000 collectors now. With these numbers, for these numbers to be meaningful, it would have to grow by a massive multiplier. In 6th place, we got ourselves the Espeon EX, another card from Prismatic Evolution. This card is currently going for $825. There are 448 PSA 10 copies of it. It used to go for upwards of close to $2,000. So in a couple of months, this list might look completely different again, where I think a lot of these Prismatic Evolutions cards are going to be lower on the list. The Charizard EX, the Great Felt Hat Pikachu, the Bubble Mew, some of these older cards, they're probably going to be a little bit higher on this list. So if we do this list again at the end of this year, you can timestamp this video. It's going to look like a completely different list because I think a lot of these Prismatic Evolution cards are going to go down. Same with the next one. We got ourselves the Pikachu EX from Surging Sparks. This card is also going for $825. I'm giving it a little bit of an edge because it's older and it's still able to command this level price. A lot of the Prismatic cards are going down a little bit faster, so we'll have to wait and see. It might be able to be above the other Prismatic Evolution cards. We'll just have to wait and see. And there are 4,142 copies of it in a PSA 10. That's a lot. That's a lot. This is a card from Surging Sparks. Surging Sparks is not that old of a set. It's 6 or 7 months old as far as a set is concerned. And there's already 4,000 copies of it in PSA 10, which means most likely in a year or two, there will be 12,000 or more copies of this card. And that's, I'm laughing because that's so absurd that there's so many copies of it, but these cards are in demand. People absolutely do want copies of them. In 4th place, we got ourselves the Sylveon EX, which is currently going for $850, but it used to go for as much as $2,000 at a release. You can't really take too much of that because at release, the cards are going to be way more expensive because there's so few PSA 10 copies out there. Someone with very deep pocket who wants an immediate copy of that card in PSA 10 is willing to drop whatever amount of money they want. There's currently 600 copies of it in PSA 10. And in 3rd place, I think this one is the important number. We got ourselves the Vaporeon EX, again from Prismatic. This card is currently going for $900. It's going for more than a lot of the other cards on this list. This card is going for more than the Sylveon, the Espeon, the Leafeon, and I think a big part of the reason why the Vaporeon is so high is due to the population report. There's only 294 copies of it in a PSA 10, which means based on the data, the Vaporeon EX is the hardest of all the evolutions to get graded in a 10. It's either the least one to get graded, or it's one of the ones that tends to get the least amount of 10s. And the ones that are harder to get 10s off are going to command a little bit more of a premium because there are people that want the complete set in a PSA 10, and the ones that want the complete set, they're going to be struggling to find copies of it in a PSA 10 because there's just less of them around. In 2nd place, we have the only regular illustration rare in the top 10, and I'm laughing again because it's the Magikarp illustration rare from Paldea Evolved. Paldea Evolved, the little carp that could. This card is currently going for $1,300 in a PSA 10. That is a gargantuan price. That is a Gyarados price for an illustration rare. There are only 2,450 PSA 10 copies of it. I say only because this card is actually quite old. Paldea Evolve is over 2 years old, and there's only 2,450 copies of it. That goes to show you how hard it is to get this card graded. Remember, another card on this list is the Pikachu EX SIR from Searching Sparks. It's a harder pull than the Magikarp, but there's already 4,000 PSA 10 copies of it, which means there's probably going to be 6,000, 12,000 copies of it in a year or two. This Magikarp run cycle is kind of done. There might be a couple more PSA 10s here or there of it being added consistently, but there aren't going to be a massive wave of Paldea Evolve products released. Knock on wood, you never know. Maybe Paldea Evolve will have a massive restock in 6 months, but I kind of doubt it. So unless there's a massive restock of Paldea Evolve, the life cycle of the Magikarp is kind of done. If you have this card in PSA 10, you can almost sort of rest assured that there aren't going to be a ton of supply of it added to the market anytime in the future. So all that's left is really demand. Is the demand for this card is going to go up or down? And I personally think the demand of the Magikarp is only going to really go up rather than go down, because it is kind of an iconic, really popular art, and it is kind of a hard chase card from Paldea Evolve. And in first place, we have ourselves, you guessed it, the #1 chase card from Scarlet Violet, which is the Umbreon EX from Prismatic Evolution. It has a lot going for it. Incredibly desirable and incredibly hard to pull. There are currently 1,168 copies of it in a PSA 10, which means it is the most graded of any of the evolutions from Prismatic Evolutions, which means if you pull yourself a random Flareon, you might not grade it. If you pull yourself a random Vaporeon EX, you might not grade it. But if you pull yourself an Umbreon EX, you're almost definitely going to grade it. And I think that makes complete sense, because if a random Joe somewhere pulls themselves a Vaporeon EX or a Flareon EX, they might say, neato, that's a really cool $200, $300 card. I'm going to keep that one nice and safe. But if you pull yourself an Umbreon EX, whew, you're going to be sweating. You're going to be thinking, well, I got to preserve this card. This is a big deal. So that's why the Umbreon EX is graded at a magnitude multiplier higher than all the other evolution. But it doesn't really matter, because even though there's way more copies of the Umbreon EX, the demand for the Umbreon EX is way higher than any of the other evolution. There are people that only pick up Umbreon EX and none of the other cards, which is why there's close to 1,200 PSA 10 copies of it, which is 4 times more than Vaporeon, Flareon, Jolteon, but it's still commanding the most price. It's currently going for $2,800, which is a massive price from any of these other cards. If you look at it in second place, the card is the Magikarp illustration rare, is 2 or 3 years old, is incredibly hard to pull, incredibly hard to grade, and it's only at a fraction of the price of the Umbreon EX. It really goes to show you how much demand can really carry some of these cards. People, I think, worry too much about supply, and that's partially me too. I think about some of these numbers and I say, well, 37,000 Great Felt Hat Pikachu is too many. It'll never be that expensive. But you can see, even with 37,000 copies of it in PSA 10, it's commanding upwards prices of $800, $900, and it's still climbing. It might stay flat for 3 years. It might stay at $800 for 3 years straight. That would not surprise me. But cards like to spike. They like to stay flat. A lot of cards like to stay flat for a couple of years, and they just sort of hit a point where everyone says, oh yeah, I kind of want a copy now. They don't want to feel like they're missing out on a cheap purchase. That's actually how some people feel, is that if I don't pick up this card at $800 right now, I'm gonna be kicking myself when it's going for $1,200, $1,500. And when they think like that, that's when they start picking up some of these cards. Probably everyone has a copy of Great Felt Hat Pikachu. If everyone who's watching this video buys a Great Felt Hat Pikachu, there's still more copies of it out there, but it's still that desirable. So I think people need to think about like the demand for some of these cards rather than the supply. But super interesting list. Like I said, if I did this list 5 or 6 months ago, none of these cards will really be on it. In fact, most of the cards on this list came out in Searching Sparks or Prismatic Evolutions, and we might not have even had data on them back then because Prismatic Evolutions wasn't even out yet. So really interesting. Let me know what your thoughts are. This is a completely different list than how things would have looked like 5 or 6 months ago. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.